hello, and welcome to another edition of teissTalk with me, your host, Jenny Radcliffe. And I want to say welcome to all of our audience because it's a very special show today, folks. Today is our 100th teissTalk. Yay! And so we have got lots of brilliant conversation as always and great guests on the show today. But we are also very happy to say that we are going to be giving away 5, count them, teissTalk special limited edition 100th show mugs, which at some point we might even have a picture of, but not right now. They are so limited and secret that I can't even show you what they're like. But 5 of our lovely audience are going to win a special teissTalk mug. So looking forward to that. We've got a great show for you today, because today we're talking about prioritizing our security vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. And we've got great guests to talk about it. In a moment, I'll be joined by Professor Leandros Maglaras from De Montfort University, as well as familiar face in the cyber world. I'm going to take these off because otherwise all you can see is the reflection that I can see. Andrea Manning, who is CEO and co-founder of CyberPy, and Marvin, who is CEO and co-founder of Adaptive Shield, who are also our sponsors today. So hello to everyone from Adaptive Shield, and thank you for sponsoring the show. But first, I'd like to bring onto the stage my opening guest, who I'm very, very excited about talking to because his reputation goes before him in this industry. Welcome to the show, Professor Leandros Maglaras.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you really well, Leandros. Welcome to teissTalk. It's lovely.
The problem is that I cannot hear you from my Bluetooth. I don't know what happened.
Oh, right. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
So welcome to the show, Professor. It's going to be... I mean, I've been looking, obviously, to chat to you today. I've been looking up at your biography, and I can see that you've been involved in so many things. So maybe it's better for you to put it in your own words a little bit more about who you are and what exactly it is that you do.
Yeah. So now I'm a professor in cybersecurity at De Montfort University, which is a center of excellence for cybersecurity, recognized from the National Cybersecurity Center of the UK, both for research and teaching. And we are also a center of excellence for industrial control system security by Airbus. And we are conducting research in several aspects of security and privacy. A couple of years ago, I used to be the director of the National Cybersecurity Authority of Greece, where we try to implement the national cybersecurity framework of Greece in order to, first of all, to secure the critical infrastructures and the rest of the national important digital services that we offer to our citizens.
And so, I mean, this is a huge achievement because Greece became almost a world leader during your time there, didn't it? It got to the top of, I think, some of the national measurements and things. And tell us a bit more about that, because that must have been a huge challenge.
Yeah, actually, this was a very good milestone that we achieved. So although we were a new authority, a new cybersecurity authority that was launched in 2017, we managed in just a couple of years to become first in the NCSI index that measures the preparedness of countries in terms of cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. This is not something that we achieved on our own. We had the help from the Cybercrime Unit, from the Cyber Defense Agency. So all the different authorities that are related to the cybersecurity in Greece collaborated very well, and we created the framework for securing the critical infrastructures. This involved very complex and big projects that we managed to finish on time. For example, by issuing the first national cybersecurity law for Greece, the first strategy for the cybersecurity, by identifying the critical infrastructures and other such tasks and projects that we managed to do just in a couple of years. So it was very, very interesting and very pressing times, I could say. So a lot of different projects running on the same time.
It must give you a specific view on sort of the effects of cyber or the use of cyber in sort of on that global scale, on that geopolitical scale, to have that level of experience and that level of involvement. When you see what's happening in the world now, for example, in Ukraine, do you think back to those times and what you need to do to protect a country? I mean, does it remind you of that work, and what can you add to that situation at the moment?
Cybersecurity now becomes a very important aspect for all countries. That is why for cybersecurity focus that you see in European and not only level, and we know right now that all the physical attacks can be combined with cyber attacks, and vice versa. A cyber attack can become physical if it is a very well organized attack. So that's why a new term that has arisen is hybrid attacks.
Yeah.
So we combine physical with cyber in order to manage to have our targets. For that reason, the European Union has created the cyber diplomacy toolbox. It's a toolbox that it can be used in order to not attribute the attack to someone, because it's not easy to attribute the attack to a country, but to attribute at least to some persons that we can have sanctions against them. But the important thing is that since this diplomacy toolbox exists, it is a deterrent tool. So the countries that are, let's say, enemies of the European Union will not be so willing to attack the European Union as a whole or some countries of European Union. So this is very important. And similar things happen also in the USA. We have a similar, not toolbox, but a similar bunch of tools that can be used against someone that is cyber attacking USA. So this is something that we see very happening right now.
It's brilliant to hear your insights on this, because I think there's so much commentary on it, and just to come from someone like yourself, it's important that we hear it. What sort of research interests have you got right now? What are the sort of, specifically, what are the type of things that you're looking at De Montfort right now?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Actually, what is happening right now, and this is something that happens in worldwide, is that let's say that we are moving from research for research to research for solutions. So we're moving to higher TRL level solutions. So in De Montfort University, we try to create some security solutions that can be applied to any company, either local or global. For example, we have created a novel authentication mechanism that can be used in order to secure ourselves against attacks to our mobile phones. So right now, when you, for example, when you enter your bank, you sign in the bank, you have the password and the username, and then you have a two-factor one-time password that comes to your mobile phone. But we have seen that a lot of these mobile devices have been vulnerable to many different kinds of threats.
Yes.
So this one-time password can be stolen either on transit or during arrival on the mobile phone. So for that reason, we have created some novel authentication mechanisms that include another aspect of something that only the user knows.
Mm-hmm.
For the same thing, and especially for the mobile phones that have all of our digital life right now, we try now to implement new full end-to-end encryption solutions, because the existing end-to-end encryption solutions reveal all the information to the two end nodes, to the two mobile devices of the users, which are not secure, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So these are two things we're working on. We are also working on several aspects of securing automated driving, automated cars, created maturity assessment frameworks in order to measure the security posture of organizations, and many, many more. So I will stop.
Oh no, but it's brilliant, and I mean, you know, a lot of what you're saying actually ties in really well with what we're going to talk about the rest of the show. I was just so interested to see what the research interests were, from that centre of excellence. So thank you so much for enlightening us a little bit on that, and we've certainly spoken about some aspects of those on the show, and I'm sure we will in the future. So thank you so much for enlightening us, Leandros. That's the professor there. Stay with me because I thought that would be a great introduction, actually, to today's news item. Which we are going to pick up with our other two guests in a minute. But I just wanted to speak to the professor first of all about this bit because I thought it might be interesting. And it's about exactly that. It's about the fact that misconfigurations from cloud in our mobile apps do expose vulnerabilities in our mobile phones. And it's an article from Information Security Magazine, and it's all about it. And it goes into detail of a study by Checkpoint showing mobile applications leaking sensitive user data. Wondered what your initial comments were on this, Leandros. I think it was 2,113 mobile applications had leaked data in Checkpoint study.
Yeah. The important thing here, if we go through this report about the vulnerable applications, it's not applications per se. It's how we are using our mobile phones. First of all, we have all our digital life there. We think it is secure, and the second thing that I have, because I have a lot of thought about it during the morning, is that as you read during the article, it says that it's not so important the data breach itself, but how this data can be used. So since we have a lot of different applications that we use, and we have to have a username and a password, and all these passwords must be complex, most of the times we reuse the same password. So it's not so important if someone steals my password from a social network that I'm using. The important thing is that the attacker will reuse the same password in all of my different social and other networks that I have. And if the attacker manages to take control of my Gmail account, my Google account, then he will have access to all my other passwords, to the bank accounts, and all the other data. So he can steal my money and other information for myself, or can use this information to blackmail me or others for ransomware.
Yeah.
So this is the important thing. It's not a direct attack, but how this can lead to other kind of attacks in a later stage.
Yeah, like a layered approach, right? It's layers of attack, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, let's at this point bring in the rest of our panel. Thank you so much.
Let me try also to fix my this thing. I cannot.
Let me bring onto the stage Andrea Manning, a familiar face on the cybersecurity scene in the UK, CEO and co-founder of CyberPi, and joining us, I think, from near Dublin. So happy St. Patrick's Day as well.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm on the other side. I'm on Galway, but Ireland's small enough.
All right, okay. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day. And also bring onto the stage Mao Bin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Adaptive Shield and today's sponsor. Hi, Mao, you okay?
Hey, Jenny. Yeah, totally fine. I hope you're doing well, and thanks for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. So first of all, I think let's go to Mao first. Let's talk to me a little bit about what you guys do at Adaptive Shield, because it does relate to this article and to today's show.
Absolutely. In few words, this is exactly, the kind of problems that we're trying to solve here at Adaptive Shield. Generally speaking, we connect to all the SaaS applications that an organization uses, and looking for security loopholes, collecting misconfiguration, which could be anything you can configure across your SaaS estate. Which includes, global settings, user permissions, everything you can go ahead and tune, and try to avoid these kind of mistakes or leaks or problems in happening in the first place. So yeah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to me that you say that, because if I come back to Andrea for a minute, at CyberPi, I mean, more focused on the human side of things, Andrea, like I would be myself. But this, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and what your thoughts on this article were? Because when I first looked at it, I was thinking, how much is this got to do with culture and mistakes and human error? So tell us a bit more about cyberpie, and then let's see what you think about this article.
So cyberpie is based on what Leandro was saying, that layers, and our thing is just one bite at a time, because it's overwhelming for anybody to do. So we almost take the premise that if we can get one person to change one password, and you just keep building on that, and regardless of the size of the organization, if you just break it down into manageable chunks, cybersecurity isn't that big scary thing. And very much, instead of telling people what not to do, we tell them what they can do. Because you read that article and it's all scaring you. It's this vulnerability, it's that, but there's nothing about what can you actually do.
No.
So that's very much what I do, is addressing the human side, and kind of could take it from my own point of view. I just want to be spoken to like a human in plain English, and what do I need to do?
And I think that was the thing for me as well, Maura, and I'll come back to the professor in a minute as well. But it's the idea that, these applications, these mobile applications, SaaS really, they require, a myriad of configuration settings, don't they? That need to be secured properly. It needs to be set properly. And we're expecting humans a lot of the time, who maybe IT, maybe not even security, to kind of manually reconfigure half the time. Is it still a case of basic cyber hygiene, human error that's leading to this type of thing?
Well, absolutely. I think that, we all understand that the adoption of SaaS application is increasing. In each organization, you can find, dozens or hundreds of SaaS applications that a single organization uses. But it also comes with a complexity, because each one of the SaaS applications, like a word unto itself, right, contains, sometimes, again, dozens or hundreds of security settings. So me, as a security expert, not always familiar with each one of these settings and how it impact the organization. And one simple misconfiguration can lead to very serious problems like we just experienced, right?
Right. I mean, and Leandro, these are dynamic apps as well, aren't they? This never stands still, this type of thing.
So is it for me because I cannot hear you very well, as I told you?
Oh, right, okay. I was saying that these type of apps are dynamic. It's a constant, it's a bit like, reminds me, it's a little bit like that constant monitoring is so important, because everything's changing all the time.
Yeah, so it's not something static. You cannot say that I have done a vulnerability assessment or I have seen all the problems right now and I know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Everything changes. The attacks are becoming more sophisticated, and the organization also changes. So it's not the same organization I have today as I will have in 1 month. For example, we have seen the latest year that, for example, as I take an example of a university, our university used to be constrained inside some buildings or the networks with some capabilities of working from home from time to time. But since the COVID, most of the works have been can be taken out of the premises of the university, and most of the people are working from home, from different countries. Students are coming from different countries also inside the systems. So we have to make sure that they have the correct rights. And this is why now we're moving to the zero trust approach. So we trust no one who enters our systems, even the administrators, and they give them the least privilege they must have in order to do their work, instead of giving them just a VPN or a tunnel to enter the system and do whatever they used to do from their PC inside the university.
Absolutely. I mean, Andrea, the hybrid and working from home model just complicated awareness and getting across all of this even further, didn't it? I mean, it's still an issue.
That's it. And I think, there's still hundreds and hundreds of companies out there that still don't have a bring your own device policy. Yet everybody is using their mobile phones with all these apps and working. So there's a lot more things to secure. But I think the best the best way to tackle it is almost sort of reverse engineer it and kind of go, what's the worst that can happen? Right, let's focus on that and look at the impact. So I always kind of go back to my old friend GDPR, because that gets you in a really defensible position. If the worst happens, you want to make sure that all your GDPR is beautifully lined up. But it's a good process because it gets you to do all those policies, go through all those procedures, look at where your risk is. But I think for all of us, just make sure that, it goes back to those things. Have you got your backup? Have you tested your backup? Because these things are going to keep happening. Every week there's going to be a new news story about new vulnerabilities. So we have to assume the worst will happen and rather maybe look at getting ourselves into a defensible position. And that's a much easier thing to communicate to people instead of scaring them, because I think in cybersecurity we shout fire every day.
We do. Well, look, the article concludes, and it completely fits with what you're saying, really. It concludes the cloud misfigurations are the consequences of a lack of awareness, policies, and security training, and then heightened by the hybrid model. I mean, Ma, would you agree with that? In the end of the day, that is what it's a combination of. It's the complexity of doing this manually. It's training, and it's awareness and policy as much as anything else that's leading to this. And it was a huge amount of data that the article goes into.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, it's hard to rely on humans to, be familiar with each and every, setting of these, complex environments, right? And this is why I think, we're seeing an increase of automated tools that are being adopted in every organization to help them, resolve these specific problems and avoid human errors and such.
So, look, I think it's food for thought, and it does lead us nicely into today's wider topic. But before I go into that, do remember that we do have 5, count them, teissTalk, a special 100 show editions mugs that are up for grabs today, and they will go to the most engaged members of our audience, the best questions. So if you do have a question for me or for any of our panel on this topic, pop it into our Q&A, which is on the tab on the right of your screen, and we will try and get through as many of them as we can and start allocating those sweet, sweet teissTalk mugs, which I don't have because I'm on location, but they are so secret, but they are very, very cool. So let's keep that coming. I can see a few observations already, as well as a question from Shiri. The question is, what is the best way to protect your organization against all these misconfigurations, especially when employees might not be on top of it all? And I just want to say, I know I'm not on top of it all. I always look at my phone and how many apps I need updating. And perhaps we can ask our panel to have a quick look. I wouldn't expect everybody, certain members of our panel, but I mean, I have 44 apps right now that need an update. And, I update that regularly. Mawa, will most of those apps, they'll mostly be security updates, right?
Well, it really depends if you're talking about, apps that you deploy on-prem or on cloud, or you're talking about SaaS applications. So if it's a SaaS application, so the responsibility of securing the infrastructure is on the SaaS vendor side, and the responsibility of configuring it correctly is on the security team of the organization side. If you're talking about, application that you deploy on cloud or on-prem, so yeah.
So it is.
Really,
do you have any that need updating, Ma? You're not going to tell me if you do, right?
Well,
So you don't need to tell me. Andrea, how about you? What about your app situation there?
It's the same thing. And I think whenever I start any security awareness training, I always begin by telling people how my Netflix account was taken over because I was busy traveling and multitasking, how my bank account was cleared out. And as soon as you make people realize that it's not just them, because when you're doing training, their toes are curling, they are dying, they are thinking, oh my God, but we're all the same, nobody's perfect. And as soon as you let them know that that's it, and that's why it's called human error. It's not, we are humans and we will multitask. But I think if you can give people tools, so, they teach you about habit stacking. So if you say to people, every morning when you have your first coffee, just check your phone and update 2 apps. Yeah. And it goes back to, instead of telling people what not to do, show them what they can do.
Do you know this is true? But I'm just going to go back to Mara. I think the professor's just trying to log on again. But that's true. But I think part of the answer to this is surely the automation of the majority of it, because if we can get people, the decisions that people have to make down to a minimum, then we're closing the risk on that, aren't we, Mara?
I think it's a matter of prioritization eventually. You need to prioritize and first of all understand the attack surface that you're trying to defend, and try to prioritize then the low-hanging fruits that can bring immediate value. And after that, build a plan for the rest of the year in order to find and fix all the things that you need to do in order to protect the assets that you defined as important. So, for example, if you, after account takeover is the most common threats in your organization or the thing that you want to defend the most, so you need to go after and fix, the things that are related to making sure, proper authentication mechanism are aligned, and all the settings that are related to that are aligned with your security policies, that you're using modern authentication, using multi-factor authentication, disable legacy protocols, and by that, actually try to prevent threat from happening in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely, and I think that's a good answer leading into today's topic, which is about how we prioritize these things. What do you do when there's too much to do? How do we prioritize it all? Excuse me, Leandros, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yeah.
So maybe I can come to you first with just your general thoughts on this topic then. How do organisations go about getting their ducks in a row on this? How do they go about saying, these are the things that I have to prioritise, that I can't slip, when there's so many things and it changes so much?
This is a very complex question that doesn't have any quick and easy answer, to tell you the truth.
No.
So there are different frameworks that many people follow. Instead, for example, they can use the common vulnerability scoring system to see what are the vulnerabilities they have, or they can do a risk-based vulnerability management. But according to my opinion, the first thing the organization must understand what are the assets they have. For example, I remember I used to be in an organization, do it something like an audit, mostly like an advisory meeting, and they didn't even know what are the servers they had. So we found out during the travel we had in the server room, a server that nobody remembered it was there. And actually, this server was a web server. The website was live. It was a website that was live many years ago. Nobody had mentioned it or because they use it anymore, because people come and go, and the business continuity is missing. So if some people are leaving the organization, the IT department, the new ones don't have the full picture sometimes. So this is very important. What are the assets? Which assets are important? What are the important service that this organization is offering to the people? What is the main business? So it's not only about finding vulnerabilities, but finding what will have the major impact to the company if something bad happens, and how we can first of all secure this, and also how to make sure that we understand what is the posture of the organization. So for that, in order to understand that, there are some frameworks we can use, like the ISO one, to do an audit, to understand find the assets and do a security audit. Or we can even go to broader frameworks like maturity assessment, that we have to follow different, not only the risk management, but also other categories of the organization, like awareness. If there is an awareness program, how often we update it, and how often we check that everything is followed. What are the business continuity plans, the incident response plans, etc. So this is a very complex problem, and it involves also to be able to understand what are our capabilities in terms of people that can be involved in this security management and vulnerability management, and what are the money that we can spend, and how often can we increase this budget because this budget cannot be unlimited, unfortunately.
I mean, when you hear that, Andrea Manning, does that worry you when you hear that? Because when you see of all the different the different priorities and the budget that it's going to take to kind of cover them, do you think, oh God, they're going to forget about the awareness, and that's the most important thing? I mean, do you think that when you hear that?
Well, that's it. I mean,
because
obviously that's my area is awareness, and I always say to people that's almost one of the easiest things to cover. It's one of the lowest costs in cybersecurity, but it's not taken as importantly. And you still see companies doing an annual video training, put them in an automated program, tick a box, your security awareness training is done. And then you see other companies where they bring somebody like yourself or myself in, and they make it a team building day. You do an exercise in a box, and you have prizes, and you find your cybersecurity champion, and you buy them books, and you make it part of the culture. But that is still not. That's a rarity. That's the exception, not the norm.
Exactly, and what we're hearing is, and I'm sure I'm gonna come to Mara about this, but what we're hearing is from the technical side, it's got to be done constantly. So I guess from the human side as well. But yesterday when we were doing some rehearsals for this, I said to you, Mara, I was surprised that this was as down to human error as much as it actually is. It's just that argument, isn't it, for taking those decisions away from users and so that they can focus on what Andrea does best, type of thing.
Well, I think that, as I said before, small mistakes can lead to a very, very serious problems when it comes to, this type of things and configuration. But you're asking about prioritization. So I agree here with the panel, eventually what you need to do is you're probably asking yourself, how secure am I? So how do I measure it? So you have many security frameworks that, lots of organizations are following, like NIST, MITRE, these kind of frameworks that helps you to understand and map the security controls that you need to do and you need to achieve. And if you can take these settings and map them to the relevant security controls, these security frameworks, you'd be able to measure yourself and ask yourself the question, how secure am I?
Yeah.
Right.
I think we partly answered some of these questions that are popping up in the chat, but I just want to say thank you to everybody who's putting these questions up there. I've got one from Chris here saying, almost all the breaches I read about are due to a misconfigured this and that bucket. What can CISO security teams implement to protect themselves against this type of misconfiguration attack? Maybe we go to the professor first. Leandros, what can CISOs do to implement? What can they implement to protect themselves against this type of attack?
This brings me to a very good discussion I had lately with some CISOs. So what is the worst job to have right now? To be a CISO.
Our audience would high five that one, I'm sure.
It's like a goalkeeper. So even if you stop 1,000 attacks, nobody notices it. But when you have one attack that is successful, then everybody's pointing to the CISO. So how can you stop it? You cannot do it if by only one person. So you cannot check everything. You have to have processes in place, like a process you have for updates, for all the other things like change management process, etc. You have to have processes in place that you have a group of people or a specific person, for example, or specific group of people that do this exercise every week, every month. To see if all the configurations are correct. But again, this cannot happen by a specific person. It's like the question, are you a cybersecurity expert? Nobody can be a cybersecurity expert. Cybersecurity is not about one specific thing. It's about hardware, software, databases, web applications. It's so many things, so many different things. So you have to have experts for every field that can be able to do this exercise for their specific field. You cannot do it for everything. And this leads to the 1 million question that I had in a previous discussion. I was in another conference. So it was a question, what about SMEs? What about small companies? They cannot have such kind of a group of people that can be experts in specific areas of cybersecurity. And how can you secure them? And especially now with the GDPR and all the fines that will probably come when you have a data breach. Yeah. And this is an answer that I don't have. Maybe you can have it as a service, but how can you expect such a service to be tailored to every organization? So so the problem remains, and we all try to find some answers and some solutions to that. And this involves all of the things we have said. So we have to train correctly the people. We have to make everyone aware the security is a problem of everyone. It's not only for the IT. Everyone is part of the security solutions and the problem for the organization.
Absolutely. And I know, Andrew, you want to come in about the smaller businesses, just quickly. So I know
Leandros, you're singing my song there, because I look after the SME and the small business, and they might not even have an IT team. And if they outsource their IT, they're lacking the education side. So and I think this goes for all organizations. It comes down to communication, because when we talk about cybersecurity, we talk about things like vulnerabilities, patching, CVS scores. It's white noise to the average person. And I think we need to learn how to communicate better. And as I say, I said at the beginning, every day in cybersecurity, we're shouting fire. So how do people know if it's a big fire or a small fire, when to call the fire department, which fires they can put out themselves? And then I say, how do they put them out?
So, I think I'm going to go to some of our questions, because our audience is on fire today. Thank you. So we've got some questions. I'm going to come first. I think we'll come to Ma. A question in from Benjamin saying, Ma must, so both Leandros and Ma, but I'm going to come to Ma, must have examples of SaaS misconfigurations that led directly to damaging breaches rather than potential breaches. Do you have an example of one that led, a SaaS misconfiguration that led straight to a breach?
Yeah, absolutely. It happens literally every day in every organization, and the most common attack that I can think, on top of my head is the abuse of these legacy protocols that I mentioned earlier, which, for example, if you use Office 365 or Gmail, so it's a best practice to have like multi-factor authentication, as we discussed. However, there are ways for whether it's by design or by mistake, to bypass multi-factor authentication when you authenticate to a specific server, let's say an email service. So, for example, if you enable IMAP authentication, which can by default, bypass multi-factor authentication, or you touch mobile phone alias. So if you enable ActiveSync, which is a mobile authentication protocol, so by doing this kind of mistake or enable these, specific security settings, you can allow users to, bypass multi-factor authentication. But you're not only doing that, you're doing also, you enable it also for attackers or threat actors to abuse this kind of misconfigurations, right? And we're seeing every day, brute force attacks and threat actors, abusing these misconfigurations in SaaS applications in order to, try to brute force a specific password and then hijack the account. There are many other examples as well. But,
that ties in with what Leandros was saying. I just want to get some comments in from some of our audience before we run out of time. I've got Minesh saying, I agree with Leandro's answer, but I must say I've always found it incredibly difficult to have 100% visibility of our assets. Probably another topic, but we did a BIA on our systems to figure out what was critical and makes the money and make sure the stuff is in top shape for patch management. Basically saying this other stuff it's never ending. Poor Minesh is saying it's never ending, Leandro. So he does agree. And Benjamin answered that with no idea why InfoSec teams have asset management in their roles. We don't buy the assets. For large organizations, this has to be IT. They barely ever know what was bought, where it is, but we've got to protect it. Do you want to just comment on that, Leandros? Because they're good comments on.
Yeah, I don't know how to comment on this. Yes. The problem, what is the problem right now? So as we move to the cloud services, so maybe we have a cloud just for storage. Hopefully it's a private cloud, or we have a cloud as a service. So we use some of the services for our benefit, for example, email service. So it's out of our control anymore. So we cannot have control of these assets. So and make sure that they are secure. We try to make secure by using some SLAs, some contracts that we sign with the vendors, and make sure that they are secure. And we ask for them that you are at least that level of we have that level of security by giving us some certifications you have, some ISO that you have passed, but again, this is not enough. And this is why, as you have already noticed, that the European Union is trying to issue this cybersecurity certification scheme and framework for all the services, applications, hardware, and software that is used by European citizens. This is something huge. This is not something that will not end very, very soon, although the first schemes for cloud, we have already seen them issued by ENISA. I think that this will go, will continue to, let's say, somehow move the problem one step further. For example, let's imagine that we ask for all the hardware that we use, all the mobile phones that we bring inside European Union, for example, from Egypt. It doesn't matter the country that it comes from, that they have this certification. Who is doing this certification? This certification must be done in the factory in this country. So instead of having the problem of trusting the manufacturer, now we have to trust the authority that is doing this certification, that is doing this audit. So again, it's a matter of trust. So it's not so easy, because all the things that we're using, most of the things that we're using are not built in-house, or they are not even stored in-house. So the clouds that we have, our information may be in Brazil or whatever. So we don't know. We trust them by everything is fully encrypted and stored in a secure way, but
with the right tech, absolutely. But with the right tech and the right attitude, I just want to get some more of our lovely audience's comments. One here, maybe for Andrea, Shiri saying, maybe organizations need to offer free mugs to employees that keep on top of their security settings. Maybe I get one if I keep on top of it next time. We've also got a question. We've got a question. I'm on top of it. I updated it this morning. Minesh, I never give you a fright that I have 44 apps to update. I updated them this morning. This is just during the course of a working day. What is going on? We've got
nothing wrong with bribery, though. Go back to the mugs. If it works, it works.
Well, exactly. Let's say one from Daniela again. How do you defend the prioritization of agendas? For example, in terms of visibility, how can you convince your organization about the added value of that vulnerability scanner you've been asking for? Or maybe Mao is the best one for that. How to convince an organization about the added value of a vulnerability scanner you've been asking for? Daniela says, do you use the fear factor? Shadow IT, how do I justify, how do we defend that prioritization?
I think if is she asking about the results that the vulnerability scanner might produce, or the fact that they actually need a vulnerability scanner? Either way, the need is very easy. Usually what you do is just try the thing, and then if it produces value, there you go. Here's your answer, right? You should do the same for vulnerabilities and for misconfiguration for IaaS and SaaS, obviously. And if you're talking about, getting the results and prioritize them, so I think we discussed it earlier, right? It's, mapping into security domains and try to understand, and to security frameworks and try to understand what is the what you're trying to defend.
Because then you can defend that prioritization. And I think it comes back to what Andrea was saying about its communication, and it's de-jargoning, if that's a word, but it's taking that apart so that we can defend it and we can justify what we're trying to spend a lot of money on. Paul Barnes says on that topic, what about people? We're discussing technical controls, but people define, build, configure, implement, and use. It always comes back to this, doesn't it? I know we talked about it in rehearsal when we were going over and doing some prep for the show, but back to people. The professor said it yesterday. Andrea, this is a good question. It's true.
It is, and it's psychology. That's why I love cybersecurity, because it's all psychology. And I know, like, I hate taking the bins out every night, but I take them out because if I don't, they won't get collected and I'll have rats. You have to get to the why. Sometimes logic doesn't work. Sometimes the threat of fines, all the GDPR fines, everybody was threatened with 20 million or 4% of your turnover. It didn't work. So you have to get to everybody. You have to find everybody's underlying why. And the underlying why for a SME is vastly different to a big organization. And that, that's when it comes to, your humans.
It comes to the humans.
Your communication.
And I was surprised when we spoke about this, like I said, when we did the prep, that was fundamentally, it's using the tech to make the human's job easier and smaller, and then training the people about all of those risks so that we can keep ourselves more secure, I guess.
You have to use tech to take away some of the burden. You can't put the burden on the humans all the time. Even the developer who misconfigured, why did he misconfigure? Was there too much of a burden? How many things was he dealing with? How much support did he have? How much training did he have?
Because it's just huge, right? There's just so many configurations that we're putting on human beings. Well, look, I think we're kind of rigorously agreeing with each other on this one, and we are approaching the end of the show. We've got comments coming up. There's lots and lots of questions. We've got one here from Ugo, who's asking the professor about zero trust. Is there a negative side? Perhaps, Leandros, you could answer that very quickly. Ugo's question was, is there a negative side to zero trust which we could make organizations aware of? Is there a quick answer for that one? No.
The problem with zero trust is that you have to reconfigure everything. So the people, you have to reconfigure their access inside the systems, and maybe this will make things more complex. And then you have to have someone on site ready to do some corrections all of the time. I wanted to say also something else about what we were discussing before. So there's a big, maybe someone would be interested to search on it. It's a big discussion about sustainability, cybersecurity. So if a company wants to be sustainable, they must produce secure products and must be secure. So all the companies now and all the IT people are trying to create and put in the market new products as fast as possible because there's a huge competition, and they neglect sometimes security. But once they have a big attack, then their product is losing their value, and the company is losing their reputation. So sustainability, cybersecurity is very important, and sustainability can also give some examples of how to manage correctly the production of a product, because they are more mature in this production cycle, and this is very interesting topic.
Well, it's all very interesting, and we have had brilliant contributions from our lovely audience and from my brilliant 100th show panel. I want to say thank you very much to Marvin and to Adaptive Shield for being our sponsors, to Andrea Manning from CyberPi, and of course to our opening guest, the professor there, Leandros. Thank you to you. I want to say thank you to our audience. And today, our special 100th edition teissTalk mugs, and it said cyber mugs, and I have got 5 to award, and I'm going to send them to people who are engaged and chatting away, to Shiri, to Manesh, to Daniela, to Paul, and to Ugo. And I want to say thank you to all the audience for always tuning in to teissTalk. It's been a brilliant 100 episodes, and I hope we have 100 more. Special thank you to the teissTalk elf, without whom none of this would be possible. And don't forget to tune into episode 101 on Tuesday, the 22nd of March, which is all about an effective security awareness program. But for now, and from the teissTalk team on our 100th episode, thanks again to our panel and to our lovely sponsor. And that's all from us today. Goodbye.
Thank you for the invitation.